2 months in a nursing home taught me more about life than my 77 years combined. It was a world I had never imagined myself in, a world where time felt slower, where familiar faces faded into the past, and where the meaning of life came down to the simplest of things. I had spent a lifetime chasing goals, collecting possessions, and thinking I had all the time in the world. But within those four walls, surrounded by people whose stories were coming to a close, I realized just how much I had misunderstood what truly mattered. I remember the first night vividly, the stark white walls, the unfamiliar bed, and the silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. For the first time in decades, I felt small, like a child left alone in a world that no longer felt like my own. The reality hit hard. I had left behind everything I once called home: my independence, my daily routines, my small but treasured comforts were all gone. And in that emptiness, I saw what life really boils down to: love, health, memories, and the presence of people who care. The experience changed me. It reshaped my understanding of what's truly valuable, what we take for granted, and what we often learn too late. I want to share these lessons with you, not to frighten you, but to open your eyes while there's still time. I want you to reflect before life forces you to, because if there's one thing I learned, it's this: happiness doesn't come from where you live or what you own, but from how you choose to live each moment. Let me take you through the lessons I learned, starting with the hardest one of all: loneliness. Lesson one: loneliness is the greatest challenge. No one tells you how lonely aging can be until you're in it. And in a nursing home, that loneliness is amplified. Imagine spending days, sometimes weeks, without a visitor, sitting at a table surrounded by strangers, eating a meal in silence, watching the clock tick away with nothing but memories to keep you company. This was the daily reality for many of the people I met. And even though the nurses were kind and the staff did their best to create a sense of community, it wasn't the same. Nothing replaces the warmth of family. Nothing fills the void of missing friends who are no longer here. One of the hardest things to witness was the residents whose children never came. I remember a man named Walter, 82 years old, once a proud businessman, now sitting in his wheelchair by the window every afternoon, waiting. He'd look outside as if any moment someone might walk through the door, but no one came. His children were too busy. His friends had long since passed. And so he sat staring at the world that had moved on without him. Loneliness isn't just about being alone. It's about feeling forgotten. It's about realizing that the world you built, the people you loved, and the life you lived have all faded away, leaving you behind. It's a quiet ache, one that no amount of entertainment or scheduled activities can truly erase. And I saw it in so many faces around me. This is why I urge you: don't take your relationships for granted. Call your parents, visit your grandparents, spend time with the people who love you before it's too late, because one day you may be the one sitting by that window waiting for someone who never comes. And trust me, there is no pain quite like the pain of being forgotten. The irony is, when we are young, we prioritize everything but people. We chase careers, we worry about finances, we assume our loved ones will always be there, but they won't. Time moves quickly, and in the end, it's not wealth, status, or success that will comfort you. It's the relationships you nurtured along the way. So ask yourself this: if you were in that nursing home today, who would come to visit you? If the answer isn't clear, maybe it's time to pick up the phone, reach out, and start cherishing the people who matter most. Lesson two: health matters more than wealth. We spend our youth chasing wealth, believing that financial success is the key to security and happiness. But sitting in that nursing home, surrounded by people who once had thriving careers and bank accounts filled with money they could no longer use, I learned a hard truth: none of it mattered anymore. What good is a fortune when your body is too weak to enjoy it? What is the point of working endless hours when, in the end, you trade your health for numbers in a bank account that you might never get to spend? I saw men who had built companies but now couldn't even button their own shirts. Women who once lived in beautiful homes but now needed help just to get out of bed. Their money couldn't buy back their strength. It couldn't replace the ability to take a simple walk, to cook their own meals, or to move without pain. It was a sobering realization, one that made me question my own past choices. How many times had I skipped a walk because I was too busy. How many times had I put off doctor's visits because I thought work was more important? Looking back, I wish I had taken better care of myself. One of the most heartbreaking moments was seeing a man no older than 80 confined to a wheelchair because of preventable health issues. He'd worked tirelessly all his life, saving up for retirement, dreaming of traveling the world. But now, his body had betrayed him. He told me with tears in his eyes, "I worked so hard for a future I never got to have." That moment stayed with me. It was a warning, a reminder that the time to take care of our bodies is now, not later. Later never comes the way we think it will. I want you to ask yourself, are you prioritizing your health today? Are you moving enough, eating well, and taking care of your body the way you should? Because if you don't, no amount of money will save you from the regret of not being able to live fully. Your health is your greatest wealth. Protect it before it's too late. Lesson 3, material possessions lose their value. Before I entered the nursing home, my house was filled with things I thought were important, a lifetime of collected furniture, clothes, decorations, items that I once believed defined my success and happiness. But when I moved into that small room, I was allowed only a few belongings, a few changes of clothes, some family photos, and a handful of personal items. That was it. Everything else I had spent decades accumulating meant nothing now. I realized in that moment that I had spent my life chasing things that didn't truly matter. The expensive watches, the fancy dishes, the designer clothes, all useless now. No one in that nursing home cared about what kind of car they once drove or the size of their house. What mattered was memories, relationships, and the love they had shared. Everything else was just clutter. And for many of the residents, letting go was painful. Some had spent years accumulating wealth, only to realize too late that they had traded time for things that would eventually collect dust. I remember an elderly woman who had been an art collector in her prime. She had spent her years acquiring rare paintings and sculptures, pieces she once adored. But now, as she sat in a room with nothing but a single framed photo of her late husband, she told me, "I would trade every piece of art I ever bought for just one more day with him." Her words broke me. It was a truth so raw, so undeniable. Love and time were the only things that had ever truly mattered. If you look around your home today, ask yourself, how much of what you own truly brings you joy? If you had to pack your life into a single suitcase, what would you take? I can tell you what I would bring: the handwritten letters from my children, a book that touched my soul, and the pictures of the people I love. Everything else? Just things. Just distractions. We spend so much of our lives working to acquire, but in the end, we must let go of it all. Don't wait until you're forced to say goodbye to realize what truly holds value, because when all is said and done, it won't be the things you bought that bring you peace. It will be the love you gave, the kindness you shared, and the memories you created. Lesson 4, independence is a precious gift. If there's one thing people in a nursing home miss the most, it's independence. The ability to do things for themselves, to make their own choices, to move freely without waiting for someone else's help. I took my independence for granted for most of my life. I never thought twice about going to the store, cooking my own meals, or even something as simple as putting on my shoes. But when those abilities were taken away, I felt a loss that was deeper than I ever imagined. So it was, Sandy, I feel like a loss that was, for many in the nursing home, every day was structured by someone else. Meals were served at a set time, medication was given on schedule, showers required assistance, and outings were limited. The smallest decisions, what to eat, when to go outside, what time to wake up, were no longer theirs to make. It was a quiet kind of suffering, one that slowly wore down the spirit. It's not just about needing help, it's about losing the ability to choose. And when choice is taken from you, you begin to feel like a guest in your own life. One of the hardest things I witnessed was a man named Robert. Once a strong, independent figure, he now had to wait for assistance just to get out of bed. His frustration was clear. "I spent my whole life taking care of myself," he told me, "and now I can't even walk to the bathroom alone." That pain was something I saw in many faces, a deep yearning for the freedom they once had but never truly appreciated. I share this lesson not to scare you, but to remind you, never take your independence for granted. Move your body every day, stay strong for as long as you can, keep learning, keep challenging yourself, and keep making your own decisions. Because once your independence is gone, you will realize just how valuable it was. If you can still go outside for a walk, do it. If you can still cook a meal for yourself, cherish that ability. If you can still dress yourself, drive a car, or even just decide when you want to wake up, be grateful. These small freedoms are some of life's greatest gifts. Hold on to them for as long as you can. Lesson 5, happiness comes from the smallest things. Before I entered the nursing home, I thought happiness came from big moments, promotions, vacations, celebrations. But as I spent my days in that quiet space, I realized the truth. Happiness isn't found in the grand things we chase, but in the smallest moments we often overlook. A warm cup of tea in the morning, the feeling of sunlight on your face, the comfort of an old song playing in the background. These are the things that make life beautiful, yet we rarely appreciate them until they are all we have left. I watched an elderly woman named Rose smile every morning as she sipped her coffee. She would close her eyes and take a deep breath, savoring it like it was the best thing in the world. One day, I asked her what made her happiest, and she simply said, "This, a quiet morning, a warm drink, and the feeling of being alive." That moment stayed with me because it was so simple, yet so profound. We spend our youth waiting for happiness, thinking it comes later, after we achieve more, after we have more. But happiness isn't something we find, it's something we notice. It's in the laughter of a friend, the softness of a blanket on a cold night, the peace of watching the rain through a window. And when all the noise of life fades away, those tiny joys are what remain. If you find yourself always chasing the next big thing, stop. Slow down. Notice the small, beautiful moments happening around you every day. Because in the end, it's not the big milestones you'll remember, it's the little joys that fill the spaces in between. Lesson 6, the power of forgiveness and letting go. One of the heaviest burdens people carried in that nursing home wasn't illness or aging, it was regret. I met people who had spent decades holding on to anger, grudges that had long outlived their purpose. They held on to words left unsaid, to wounds that never healed, to relationships broken by pride. But as they neared the end of their lives, they realized something painful. None of it mattered anymore. The people they were angry at had moved on while they had spent years carrying the weight of bitterness. I remember a woman named Margaret who never reconciled with her sister after a falling out 20 years earlier. She would talk about it often, saying, "I wish I had just called her." But now it was too late. Her sister had passed, and Margaret was left with nothing but regret. She had spent years waiting for an apology that never came, and in the end, she was the one who suffered. Holding on to anger doesn't punish the other person, it punishes you. It steals your peace, poisons your heart, and wastes time that could be spent in love instead of resentment. Forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's actions. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of the past. If you have someone you need to make peace with, do it now. Say the words, make the call, let go of the grudge. Because one day you may find yourself out of time, sitting with nothing but the weight of what could have been, and that is a pain no one deserves to carry. Lesson 7, every day is a gift, don't waste it. The most powerful lesson I learned in that nursing home was that time is the most precious thing we have. Every single person there, no matter their past, no matter their regrets, wished for one thing, more time. More time to be with their families, more time to enjoy the simple things, more time to live. But time is something you can't buy back. Once it's gone forever. There was a man named George who used to say, if I could have just one more year, I'd live it differently. He had spent his younger years waiting to retire, waiting for the right time to travel, waiting to spend time with his kids. But by the time he was ready, life had moved on without him. His children were grown, his body was weak, and the opportunities he once had were gone. We all think we have more time. We tell ourselves we'll do things later. Later, we'll take care of our health. Later, we'll spend more time with family. Later, we'll chase our dreams. But later is never guaranteed. The only time we are promised is now. Don't waste your days waiting for the perfect moment. Make the call, take the trip, say I love you, start the project, enjoy the small joys. Live your life so that when your time does run out, you don't look back with regret. Every single day is a gift. Cherish it while you can. Conclusion: life is not measured in years, but in moments. 2 months in a nursing home taught me something I wish I had learned decades earlier. Life is not measured by how long we live, but by how we choose to live. It's not about the years, it's about the moments, the choices, the love we give, and the memories we create. Sitting in that room, watching the days pass, I thought about all the things I had once worried about. Money, possessions, achievements, none of them mattered now. The only thing that mattered was how I had spent my time and who I had spent it with. I learned that loneliness is the hardest burden to bear, that at the end of life, what we crave most is connection. I saw that health is more valuable than wealth because all the money in the world can't buy back mobility, freedom, or energy. I realized that the things we collect mean nothing, but the love we share means everything. I witnessed how losing independence makes you appreciate the small freedoms you once took for granted, and I discovered that happiness is never in the future, it is in the smallest, simplest moments we experience every day. Most importantly, I saw the devastating cost of holding on to anger and the peace that comes from forgiveness. And I understood that every single day is a gift that should not be wasted. These are not just lessons for the elderly. These are truths for everyone, no matter their age. So I ask you this, if you had only a few months left, what would you do differently? Who would you call? What small joys would you start appreciating? What grudges would you finally let go of? If you knew that time was running out, what would truly matter? The truth is, time is running out for all of us. We don't know how many days we have left, but we do have today, and that is enough if we choose to make the most of it. So don't wait. Start living now. Love deeply, forgive freely, laugh often, and cherish every single day, because at the end of your life, you won't remember the money, the achievements, or the possessions. You will remember the love, the moments, and the people who made your life worth living. And that is the greatest lesson of all.